Hey, this is Heidi Dawson. If you love all things health and wellness and style of any kind, hang out here with me each week. I'm obsessed with never-ending improvement, and it's all in an effort to help each one of us live a wildly successful lifestyle. Subscribe today so you don't miss a thing. Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 295 of the Wildly Successful Lifestyle Podcast. How's it going out there? I'm feeling pretty good. I hope you guys are as well. I've been reading this book, so good, entitled Awareness by Anthony Di Mello. I'm going to put that in the show notes because it is so good. Now, I will warn you, he's very direct, so look out if you decide to read it. But I personally like direct. Helps me. I like people getting right to the point. Let's not beat around the bush. Now, in it, he talks a lot about a lot of things, but he talks about our identity. Now, we go through life with a certain set of filters, a conditioning of sorts. And it's sort of like a lens that we have in front of us. And that lens can be ever changing. In fact, it changes day to day. And it can be set by your culture, by your family, by the movie you watched last night even. It can be set by a book you're reading or an experience you recently had. Nowadays, a lot of times it's set by social media. I'll give you an example of that for me. At the height of COVID, when people were fighting over vaccines, in fact, it seemed like every topic of conversation included a vaccine. People seem to be either strongly for them or strongly against them. Now, I'm more of a you do you kind of person, so if you want to get it, get it. If you don't, don't. But during the height of this conversation, Jairek Robbins, who is Tony Robbins' son, he put a post on his story on Instagram saying, "I support mandatory vaccines." Now, I was pretty shocked by that because he's a pretty spiritual guy and usually pretty open like I think I am. Now, I quickly responded to that story and I said, "I'm really shocked by your position here." Well, I then just continued scrolling to his next post and it said, "Read my previous post again." To that, which I was like, red flags are going up now. And I was like, what? So I went back and I read it again and it said the same thing. I support mandatory vaccines. Then I went back a third time and read it again because I thought, I'm missing something here. And man, was the breath knocked out of me when I realized what it actually said. It actually said, I support mandatory vacations, not vaccines, vacations. That was a really big moment for me. My brain wanted to read that through the filter of what I'd been watching and listening to and thinking about. It wanted me to read, I support mandatory vaccines, but it said vacations. And I got onto him for that. Imagine how I felt. But it really was a big moment. I realized I was falling into a trap of tunnel vision. Everything I saw or heard was being funneled through a lens of my perception of what was currently the hot topic of conversation. The crisis of the day, so to speak. We got a new one every day, it seems like. Now, we all do this. Sometimes it's worse than other times, but we generally have a preconceived idea or a lens from which we view the world. And they can be pretty hard to overcome, especially if we're living on autopilot. So we have this lens and it's clouding our vision. When we realize this, though, it's pretty eye-opening. And if you're awake, you might even ask, where else am I allowing this lens to cloud my judgment? But that gets a little murky because it sends you down a rabbit hole of trying to identify all of your preconceived notions and all of your conditioning. And unfortunately, we all have a lot of that. So, I simply propose just to be aware. When something makes you uncomfortable, notice the thoughts that come with it. And you don't have to be a prisoner of your conditioning. And I've touched on this before, but I believe we can circumvent a lot of these preset lenses by being aware that we have them in the first place. Whether it be a filter of past events, a filter of labels we have for ourselves, or a filter of stereotypes. We're humans. We like to put things in neat little boxes, okay? So this means that, or this equals that. But is that always true? Does it really? For instance, when you see a priest with his black coat and a white collar, does that bring you comfort? You might say, of course, it would bring anyone comfort. My husband was born and raised a Catholic, so when he sees a priest, he feels a level of respect. Well, I grew up in a religion where when they would put out literature showing a person wearing a priest outfit or a uniform, they showed it in the light as being evil. And it usually included fire and tortured souls along with it. That's how my vision of a priest was. It was associated with something really scary. So when I see a priest, even after 25 years of not believing that way, I still want to steer away from him. That's because I was conditioned for 30 years. That's pretty strong conditioning. And there's a big difference in how my husband and I were conditioned. But I now notice it, and I notice the thoughts that come with it. Just noticing it and being aware of it gives me the chance to be open to change. In America right now, we label someone Democrat or Republican. I mean, it's really getting to the point to where once you know how someone votes, you think, that's all I need to know about that person. And I'm sad to say that that is another reason why I've gotten off social media. It's because I found myself wanting to judge people in that way. I don't want to look at someone through a filter of how they vote. I never used to even know the difference between a Democrat or a Republican. My parents don't vote at all because of their religious beliefs. So where did I get my beliefs? Well, it had to be the media, maybe social media, or maybe it could have been my peer group. I didn't create my own ideas is what I'm trying to say. I was influenced. Now, I was influenced. Social media and the news bias, the media is so biased. They will have you hating someone you don't even know and you don't even realize it until you're avoiding friends because of something they posted on Facebook. But you have to ask yourself, what changed? I mean, your friend didn't change. What changed? Maybe your friend did change. I don't know. Your thoughts about them changed. That's what happened. Think about it. If you had never read that post that they put, the next time you saw them, you'd feel the same way. You always did because your idea of them is still the same. We want to say, no, they changed. That's why we think differently of them. When in reality, your thoughts about them change. That's it. Our conditioning is happening every day. Our strongest conditioning comes from the way we were raised. Can you pinpoint at least one conditioning you've had that is stunting your growth? It could be a perception of how people are or a perception of the way life is. Now, my family had a belief that the world is going to end soon, possibly tomorrow. Now, that made planning for the future kind of unnecessary. Can you see any problems with that? Yeah, big problems, right? If you don't plan for your future. Or maybe your family had similar beliefs, something like my family is destined to have this disease or to be this certain way or to be overweight or to not be successful or to be successful. And all of this conditioning could cause you to attach labels to yourself and others. Lots of labels we apply to ourselves and we apply them to others too. For example, if I see a woman in a burqa, I used to think something negative like she probably wishes she didn't have to wear that. That used to be my thought. But where did that come from? I mean, it was not an original thought. I've never had a conversation with a Muslim woman who told me she wished she didn't have to wear it. So it had to have come from a different source. We do this all the time. This equals that. Every time you have a pre-programmed negative thought, try to start challenging it because it could be your conditioning. When you're aware of that, you realize you get to choose your thoughts, which means you can choose thoughts that empower you or you can choose thoughts that weaken you. And a lot of that depends on what influence you're under. My challenge to you today is to be aware of what you're allowing yourself to be influenced by. You're not alone. We all have conditioning, but you'll stand apart once you realize you don't have to be a prisoner to it. I love you guys. I'll talk to you in a few days. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends because we're just going to keep going bigger and better places together, and I love that about us. Talk to you in a few days.